Hello again, NBA fans, and welcome to another NBA Roundtable. My name is Matt Eppers. I am a digital producer at USA Today Sports, and we've convened another panel from around the USA Today network to break down three key storylines in the last few days of the NBA's regular season. We're going to dive into the Lakers and LeBron James' return from injury. We'll discuss the Eastern Conference Elite, and we'll identify the most dangerous potential play-in teams not named the Lakers. We're leading off again in LA, and by the time most folks see this, LeBron James will have returned from the sprained right ankle that kept him out for 20 games and then another 4 after a short comeback. Anthony Davis has been back for a few weeks now also. So, Mark, with those two guys back for the Lakers, that means the NBA title is a wrap, right?
Yeah, if only it were that simple, right? I think that somewhere is in the middle where, the Lakers championship aspirations shouldn't be written off because of their pitfalls recently and some of the injury concerns that LeBron and AD faced. But there's also question marks on LeBron's ankle specifically. Is this finally the time where it's going to get back to normal, or will there be more setbacks? But I think, if nothing else, Anthony Davis has shown that not only are there any lingering health concerns, but he has rounded a corner in terms of improving his conditioning and his performances. But you never know. This whole season, including the Lakers, has been so fluid and so many developments and challenges that, I think anything is possible.
Jeff, how does the return of a player like LeBron sort of buoy the Lakers going into the playoffs?
The Lakers need LeBron. There's just no doubt about that. And so, yes, he's the kind of guy you put him in the lineup and the team is obviously automatically better. But there are concerns here. I mean, I don't see how – well, look, there's obviously a way if Portland loses the remaining games, and Portland does have a difficult schedule. Don't get me wrong. But Portland also owns the tiebreaker against the Lakers. So really the best-case scenario for the Lakers, short of getting that number 6 seed, is to win that initial playing game. That gives them a couple extra days of rest/practice and get some time on the court together. Like Mark said, I'm never going to count out a LeBron James team. We've seen that over and over so many times, whether they're down 3-1, 2-1, up 3-1. You know what he's capable of doing. I just find that based on everything we've seen this season, including the Lakers recently, that their path to the championship is just that much more difficult right now.
Jay, you've been around the league a long time too. What do you see from afar?
When it comes to winning a championship, everything has to click. And that goes for if you look at every team that's won a championship or that's been in a running for a championship, they all have similarly in terms of good players and talent, coaching, and those sorts of things. But, usually something like injuries or a few injuries. I mean, if you even go back to last year's NBA Finals, the Lakers beat Miami in 6. What happened with Miami? They lost Adebayo for a chunk of games. They lost Goran Dragic from the top of the series began, and it kind of made it almost impossible for them to be able to win that series. If they're fully healthy, who knows how that series turns out? And the same thing goes for the Lakers in this situation. The one thing that I was curious about, and I think I may have an answer for when it comes to the Lakers, is I wasn't totally sold on Andre Drummond being this linchpin that put them over the top. And I don't know what you guys think about that, but as I see it, I don't think that's going to be – if the Lakers are able – to get back to the finals and compete for a championship again, I have my doubts that Andre Drummond is going to be the reason for that. Actually, I think sometimes you can add pieces that on paper look good and statistically looks good, but it doesn't actually add up. And so that's kind of where I'm caught with the Lakers. And also, who is their Rondo? I know Schroeder, what he's been doing is fantastic. Rondo last year for me was the difference. Like, he started hitting threes. I thought it was just a phase and he was going to get out of it by the time the finals came around, and he kept shooting threes like Steph Curry. And again, that's where I get back to my original point. So many things have to click and go in order for you to be able to win the title, even if you're talented. And the Lakers they're going to be up against it if they're able to pull this one. If they're able to win a championship this year, that's going to be far greater to me than what they accomplished last year when you consider what they've been up against when it comes to injuries and that sort of thing.
From one of the West favorites, let's shift gears a little bit to the top of the East, where it's a 3-team race between the Sixers, the Nets, and the Bucks. Jeff, each of these teams has shown, flashes of brilliance this season. Presuming full health, which is, of course, never a guarantee with the teams and players involved, who should be considered the favorite to win the East?
It's a real tough one because as much as all three of those teams have been very good this year, they each have a flaw here and there that makes me wonder, are they the team from the East to get to the finals? Right now, I am going to go with Philadelphia. I think Milwaukee's just right behind. And then while Brooklyn has all this talent, we still need to see how it comes together when James Harden returns. J. Michael points it out about the idea of how things have to go right. Well, things haven't gone exactly right. Even as many wins as Brooklyn has, those big three have played together still just 7 games. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden. And I may have mentioned this previously, but it goes back to what Doc Rivers said when his team was eliminated by Denver last year. He thought the biggest problem was that team didn't have enough games played together with the lineup they had in the postseason. And that's going to be my question. You also have a first-year NBA coach. He's a great player, obviously MVP, and Steve Nash. But how does he function in some of these late playoff series? How well does he perform? And that's why I'm going in that order right now with Philly, Milwaukee, and Brooklyn. And yet, I say that, and it wouldn't surprise me if whatever of those 3 teams makes the East Finals.
To me, all 3 of those teams can score 140 points any given night. All of them can score. When you get to the highest level, to me, it's about who can get the most stops. I mean, if we go back to, those Cleveland Golden State series, Golden State was able to get the stops to win those series. And when Cleveland was able to come back from 3-1, all of a sudden Kyrie was defending. And that's what enabled them to come back and pull that upset a few years ago when they got Cleveland its first NBA championship. When I look at Brooklyn, when I look at them, I really like Nick Claxton when they go with a smaller lineup, and it puts him in a position when you have to go against the firepower of Philadelphia or Milwaukee, in that they can change things a lot on that end because they can switch 1 through 5 and they can freeze up your offense. And so when I look at those 3 teams, I think who can defend the best in crunch time in Game 7? And to me, that's what it's going to come down to.
Lastly, we wanted to touch on the new play-in tournament, but the standings are just so fluid that sometimes it's hard to keep track of all the moving parts. So rather than try to figure out who's going to get what seeds, I wanted to ask, who is the most dangerous potential play-in team outside of Los Angeles?
Oh, boy, that's a tough one. I mean, before Bradley Beal got hurt, I would have said the Wizards could be dangerous. But now with Beal being injured, and we're not sure how long that's going to be or how it's going to affect him going forward. I don't see, that's going to be the case with Washington. I thought at one point if Toronto could make it, Toronto would be dangerous. And, they look like they're pretty far out of it. And we're not going to have to talk about them, right? So, Indiana, I don't expect to be dangerous at all in the Eastern Conference when it comes to the play-in. So I don't really fear or think anybody is dangerous in the sense that they could pull an upset when they get into the next round or when they get into the actual playoffs, when they qualify. I think the play-in itself is almost like a separate entity from the playoffs. The Lakers, I think that Lakers Golden State is the obvious answer. Look, if the Lakers or Golden State were to come out of go into that play-in and come out of it, obviously you'd be one of those 2 teams. I think if Golden State makes the playoffs somehow, I think they're a dangerous team too, just because you have Steph Curry. But there's so much fluidity between these teams with COVID, the shortened season, the schedule, the no home fans, that kind of takes away home court advantage in certain situations. I do believe we're going to see some results that maybe surprise us. I just don't see a team, if it was not the Wizards, that's going to say, wow, they could really do something if they get the right matchup. And even with the Wizards, it still would have been a long shot with Bradley Beal.
With the way the play-in works, I don't want to get, we don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole of whether or not the play-in format is a success or not. But just sort of, can we, quick and dirty, can we call the a play-in scenario a success?
Well, we'll have to see. I think that, this season itself, it's created a lot of awesome and entertaining drama toward the end of the regular season, but it's also created a lot of challenges with the compressed nature of the schedule. So I think, in fairness to the positives and the negatives, I'd like to see how this play-in tournament plays out once the traditional season comes back. And there you can kind of sift through, do the positives vastly outweigh the negatives or vice versa?
That is going to wrap another NBA Roundtable. I want to thank Jeff, Mark, J. Michael for joining us. I'm Matt Eppers. This was another episode of NBA Roundtable on USA Today Sports. Thank you so much for watching.
Hey sports fans, if you want to see more videos like this, check out some of our other ones right here. And if you like what you see, make sure to hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more from USA Today Sports.